So welcome back to the Healthy Money Podcast. As always, I am Kyle Petyak, joined by my partner in crime, Patrick.
Esteemed colleague,
Patrick Moran. The mind, the myth, the man behind the numbers or whatever. Anyways, so I have a question, and it's something we've talked about a little bit here in the office, and I just still, despite the fact that I've written an article that I'm still going to continue to work on and grow and bolster, I don't understand this 401k thing. So, and let me walk that back a little bit, and I'll give you the context as to why I even say that. So from everything I've learned thus far, the 401k was invented in the late 70s. Came up with in the late 70s, and it essentially was a tool that these wealthy people and high paid executives, what they did from what I've learned is that they created this tax code, this rule in the tax code called the 401k provision.
Right.
And what they were able to do is any money that they invested decreased their reportable taxable income. So it was this great tax loophole that they made for themselves. Well, this guy named Bana found out about it and was able to basically retool it and use the verbiage in the tax code as, he was a lawyer, I believe, use the verbiage in the tax code to then apply it to more people so companies could help empower their employees to save using these 401k tools. Now, where my real question comes in is that from what I can tell, right? And this was in 82 was when the modern 401k is sort of where it was developed.
You have to understand that companies were looking for ways to get off of the hook at that time with the conventional pension plans.
Yeah, because pensions were
being
bankruptcy.
responsible for all those payments.
Right, which that was caused like ERISA and all the other rules, making the companies the fiduciaries and all these responsibilities.
Yeah, and the fact that, they had to pay people income for the rest of their natural lives.
Yeah.
They retired or their spouses. It was a lot of money to be on the hook for.
Right. So now, essentially, as it's designed today, a 401k is a tax deferral program. Right?
Yes. So it's in the tax code.
It's in the tax code. But what people are allowed to do is they're to defer their taxes equal to their contributions on their income and then pay taxes on that later. Yeah. Now, from what I can tell, in the 80s and the 90s, but in the 80s, when this provision was created for people to use, to help them offset their taxable income and then give them a tool and a vehicle to put their money into to save for retirement.
Right.
It made a lot of sense. The average tax bracket was substantially higher than it is today. Yep. And from what I can tell is that if you were in the working class, in your young 20s, 30s, whatever, and you were new in the field and you were working, and you've been investing into a 401k for the past 30, 40 years. And let's say today you were starting to take distributions from your 401k. You effectively did what it was designed to do. You put money in at a higher tax bracket.
Right.
And now you're taking it out at a lower tax bracket.
Yeah. Assuming that, you benefit from today's historically low tax rates. I can't imagine who doesn't, but yes.
So that's what I mean. So like, I don't know, have the numbers in front of me right now. I should have prepared a little more, but like in 82 or 84, 85, 86, throughout the 90s, when people were contributing to this 401k, and let's assume that they're contributing the maximum amount or whatever they're allowed to.
Right.
And
they put rules and regulations in place.
So they're contributing to this thing, and tax brackets are high, right? And it's reducing their taxable income.
Sure. Sounds great.
Giving them a tax write-off. And now giving to today, and they're at they make under 340,000. They're in a 22% tax bracket, whereas they might have been in a 28, 32, 40% if they had been, taking the taxes on that money at the time in the 80s, the 90s, whenever.
Right. So if you're, in that higher 300 plus tax bracket and could be in that 24% tax bracket, you're right. The theory is if I make $300,000 and I can put $10,000 in my 401k, now my taxable income is built off of 290,000. So it's probably someone calling to argue with us, but hold on. Okay. So it helps reduce the taxable incomes. But, let's do a simple exercise. Really simple. Imagine that you have a piece of paper, and on one side of this piece of paper, you have $1,000. On another side of the piece of paper, you have $1,000. Okay? And on the left side of the paper, that $1,000, I'm going to allow you to put it into a plan, and you're not going to have to pay tax on it. And one of the benefits with the 401k is maybe the company's going to give you a match on a piece of what you're putting away. But let's just say you just...
Well, the reason I didn't bring up the match thing is because the amount of companies that offer a match today is really few and far between.
It keeps dissipating too. But let's just say you have that $1,000 and you have the ability to defer it, and you put your $1,000 away and you're happy. Okay, over here, that same $1,000, now I'm going to put it away, but I have to pay tax. And let's use the 22% tax bracket on average, $168,000 or less. So I'm in that tax bracket, and I've got to pay my 22% tax. So now I'm left with $780 after my taxes. Got $1,000 here, tax deferred, and I got my $780 here taxable. Let's say I earn 7%. The rule of 72 is simple. Take the interest rate you're getting, divide it by 72, and that's how long it takes your money to roughly double. So at 7% divided by 2, that would be roughly 10 years, let's say.
Right.
My 1,000 now grows to 2,000 over here, and my 780 that was taxed over here only grows to 1,560. So I'm saying, wow, I'm doing better tax deferred than I did, paying my taxes. But wait a minute, stop. That's not true. Why? Because you do have this silent partner over here. He wears this big hat, and on July 4th, he's red, white, and blue, and he's got this big old...
He's always red, white, and blue.
Yeah. And he says, wait a minute. You still got to pay your taxes, your pound of flesh. And let's just say if for some strange reason taxes were still 22%. So if you took that $2,000 times 22%, you are left with $1,560.
So
my 780 tax-free, growing, doubling is also worth $1,560. So did I really benefit from tax deferral? Because keep in mind, I just need tax rates to go up 1%. 1%. And I would have beaten you by tax deferring your money.
Right. And obviously, if we were... Now, this is actually kind of a leading statement, but it's really great, though, because if we were operating in some esoteric realm where we don't know what's going to happen, then, this is all subjective, and it's who knows really what's going to happen.
Sure.
However, we do have a certainty, right?
Yeah.
The certainty is 2026.
Well, we have the sunset provisions in 2026, which stand now, assuming that nothing changes in the election or, the tax rate don't change. I mean, my goodness, the amount of checks that we're writing, who knows what tax rates are going to look. But as it stands, tax rates are supposed to revert back or sunset back to 2017 tax rates, which places income at a higher level than it would be today.
Right.
So ultimately, you have the ability right now in these next 4 or 5 years to actually go the other way with your tax deferred investments, meaning that maybe this is the time, rather than continuing to defer and potentially now watching taxes do this as opposed to having done this, maybe I should be aggressively taking money out of my tax deferred plans in these lower tax brackets, doing Roth conversions or looking at other, tax-free vehicles, maybe index universal life, something like that.
So that leads me to my question.
Getting rid of the taxes.
It leads me directly to my question where I started with and what I'm confused about. So if we're at historically low tax rates, does it make sense to use a 401k?
Oh boy! Now
If let's say there's no match, you're just simply using a 401k, a tax deferred example.
We obviously say if there's no match, we have a real hard time telling people to defer into a 401k.
Because I've been searching everywhere trying to figure out. No one's really talking about this because I feel like the mainstream media, when it comes to finance, the mainstream media says use a 401k.
Yeah, it's
buy the index, defer on your taxes. Yeah, we have a very few people. David McKnight mainly is the only one, I think, who is saying like you got to look at these things because these tax deferred accounts where you're deferring, like if we're looking at the last 70 years and we're in the lowest tax environment we have been in, and even if you're not a super high income person, you're just using a 401k and there's no other real incentive to use it other than you just don't know what.
Yeah, it goes beyond that. Not only are you using the 401k, oftentimes you're left figuring out what investments to choose for that 401k. So all the risk that goes with that 401k, maybe someone spends 5 minutes with you during an enrollment meeting and says, hey, Kyle, well, I'm a growth investor. Okay, you need to go into XYZ. Or a lot of companies now have added what they call these target date funds. They've added them because from an ERISA standpoint, suitability rules and the rules that the laws that companies have to provide their employees, by having that in there, it allows companies to essentially get off the hook that if you're not doing well in your 401k, you know, we gave you a target date fund, we gave you maybe another option, a fixed account. That's on you.
Sure.
It won't come back on us. You know, we did what we had to do. And I think that's a bunch of, baloney, because on these asset enrollment meetings, normally the 401k has limited choices, or there's so many choices that people get frozen and just automatically default in the target date fund or go into the money market or something.
I even think most people, though, they get this influx of information from this benefits broker, and they say, I'll look at a retirement plan later.
Do it right.
I'll look at it later.
Right.
I'll get around to that because I want to read it. They take the packet home. They never open it again.
I don't read it. It's
10, 15 years go by.
Analysis paralysis.
Sure. 10, 15 years go by. They haven't done anything to actually save.
Well, so they have structural risk, which we just talked about. They have market risk, because most of these 401ks are stock-based type investments. Companies put them in to have long-term growth. And lastly, the big one you're banging on here is tax risk.
Yeah.
So I
hate paying taxes.
Well, I'm taking this money here and throwing this potential tax, really how much tax benefit are you getting? And I'm throwing all these other things on top of it. And I'm sitting there going, man, is that really what we should be out there telling people to do? Defer, defer, defer. And
it seems to me it's just that idea of this is how it's always been done, so we're just going to keep doing it this way.
Well, and then you've got the people that say, hey, listen, by doing this, look how your money compounds over the long term and it can grow because it's tax deferred. I get it. But guess who's sitting with you all along the way and is salivating that you're doing that exactly?
Right. Is letting it grow, grow, grow. Because we always say, would you rather save tax benefits on the small contributions that you're making over time or would you rather get benefits on the big benefit that hopefully those small contributions are growing to over the long term? When you go to use them, the benefit, the problem that you have with the taxes that'll be owed. Well, say that again. I don't understand.
At that point, the benefits that you're getting by deferring your money up front.
Yeah.
When you're deferring, 2,000, 2,000, 2,000, 2,000, 2,000, if you can earn.
So you're saying you're deferring 2,000 a year.
Yeah, it's compounding into a bigger number. The government's giving you a little bit of a deduction on these small amounts. Okay. So you think, great, I'm saving a little bit of income. Well, the problem is those small amounts, if they grow over time, which historically, if you put anything away in growth for 15, 20, 30 years, you're going to make money. Historically speaking, now you've taken those things that you got these little tax benefits on and have compounded and grown that money to this much bigger pie over here and are going to pay a lot more in the way of overall tax than you would have getting these little deduction benefits up front. It's ridiculous.
Okay. So that was also one of the questions I had, because we actually had this question. It was, does it make more sense, even accounting for the tax write-off that I get from my 401k contributions, in addition to the deferral, to even stop deferring?
What they're saying is when you started this earlier with people starting to save in the 70s and the 80s, taxes were very different. The environment was very different. Now what's happening is
look at interest rates for homes. Or like if you got a 12% interest rate on a home in the 80s, you're like, sweet.
Or the 14% CDs. Well, no one realizes, inflation was 12%, but regardless, The thing is this.
Well, and that's the problem too, is people putting money into savings account and they're getting 0.01%.
Well, their
return,
money's
and
not
inflation's
keeping
3.2.
up with the natural cause
like saving money in a savings
expenses.
account. Only like your savings account should be just like your emergency fund, cover monthly expenses for 3 to 6 months or whatever it is.
The milkman used to drop milk off for 10 cents. Now it's $3 and change. Or gosh, if you want to do one of these special milks, can get up way up there as far as what
just
they cost.
When I run our retirement projections for people, and I build those reports for people, and I'm looking at like just if you were to run a 3.1% inflation rate per year over the course of the next 20 years, and we did one on a 40-year-old, and I was looking at 65. So if 25 years
chews
out,
up a lot of money.
Well, the monthly expenses based upon inflation, and he wasn't spending a lot per month. It was still going to rise to like in the $25,000 a month, just because of inflation.
Because costs naturally go up.
Right.
You know, people are saying now that we're seeing some inflation with what's been going on, printing all of this money. That money's, chasing too few goods and services, which causes prices to rise. Prices rising are inflation.
Right. So even back to what you just said now, and my earlier point with inflation or with taxes, right? We're printing all this money.
Right.
Like, I think...
And we're not done yet.
Well, apparently not. We're printing all this money. This money just doesn't come from somewhere. People have to pay for it in some way, shape, or form, right? And we've said it a million times, but there's only two ways the government gets more money or deals with their finances, more so to say, is they reduce expenses or they increase taxes. Mm-hmm. So
same with us. We reduce expenses or make more money.
Right. And the way the government makes money is taxes, right? Yep. We work harder, we work smarter, we sell more products, we do more services, whatever it is. We, as an individual or as a person, you're more productive, you make more money. The way the government has more production, quote unquote, is they raise taxes. So if we're at historically low tax rates, which apparently people don't realize, they think taxes are high, or I don't know. So they don't realize that, because I ask people, and I ask them all the time. So we're at historically low tax rates and we're writing all these blank checks. How are we going to pay for this if we don't raise taxes?
We're not.
So taxes almost certainly will have to rise. So that means
I can't see a situation where they're going to pay off that debt, the government debt, in my lifetime, maybe my kid's lifetime. I mean, is it going to be just the most giant reset? Meaning dropping everything and we're going to start over to, at zero and start building again, or,
I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting
our way
conversation.
out of it, or, the U.S. is going to lose its fiat currency.
What's going to happen? Like, what would happen if China was like, pay us tomorrow, they call the debt? What do you, or say no?
Well, I mean,
it's not gonna happen.
A lot of people own our dollars, man. No.
So,
But what you have to focus on is forget about so much the paying off the debt like we have to do, and remember that you've got to service the interest on that debt. And if you go to, the debtclock.gov or debtclock.com,
it's constantly running.
I mean, the amount of debt
number is unconscious. Like, you can't fathom it.
The amount of tax revenue that the government's taking in right now is not covering the interest payment on the debt.
And we just surpassed
the interest payment.
GDP for sure.
So
I think,
by the way, the other thing that tax deferral does when you go into retirement, what I wanted to tell you was there's a lot of statistics out there on those people that are saving and generating money for retirement, because you still have a whole nother swath of people that are saving nothing for retirement.
70% of people.
And at 65 retire broke. But those people that are, a lot of them are staying or want the same type of income that they have when they're currently working, and aren't necessarily seeing their income drop either.
Right.
So we're not seeing this huge reduction potentially in their taxable earnings, because normally it was the house is paid off. Hopefully Junior's off the couch and he's working, and all these things that you used to be able to deduct and not have to throw into your taxable income. A lot of that stuff is going away now. The house is normally paid off. Normally Junior is working. You're shut down your business, so you're not itemizing anymore per se. Maybe, all these things start happening. And what happens is that there's no more things to put against your taxable income. So you're paying a lot more in taxes, and those taxes now in retirement can affect your Social Security, can affect your Medicare premiums. You know, it goes on and on and on to the other implications. And my fear is that the government, there's a broad base of things out there that they can nickel and dime away and tax to raise money. It doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, the income tax rate. Right. It could be an excise tax. It could be, you know, it could be different tax brackets. It could be eliminating things that people are getting deductions for. It could be taking away capital gains. It could be, you know, making medical expenses being much more and more before you can go and start deducting them. I mean, there's a million things they can do.
Yeah, small little changes that will have massive effects.
So you're deferring to get this money when you're retired, presumably when all these things are supposed to be in your favor, lower taxes, less, things of this nature, and you maybe aren't going to receive all these great benefits and be in the lower tax rates too, because of many other things that are going to take place that they're going to nickel and dime you on.
So I'm curious. So you got your first job as a stockbroker in 85, 86? 86. So in 86, when you were fresh on the field, was it before October?
No, that was still to me the single biggest.
Right, but like it was before then, right?
Yeah.
So how long were you in the business before Black Monday?
Oh, about a year.
Okay.
I'd gotten sick though and was out for a couple months before that happened. So,
what were you like when you were first day on the floor? Or what were you selling? Were they having you push 401ks, mutual funds, individual
it was
stocks?
Mostly proprietary stocks.
Okay, so
it's
you guys
were a different market back then.
Yeah, well, I'm curious.
Yeah, companies were making markets and stocks, meaning that Pat Moran Enterprises would go public.
Okay,
and Pat Moran would talk to E.F. Hutton and Dean Wood or maybe Merrill Lynch, and those companies would rally behind my stock and start selling it to people,
to their clients, or
and so normally you had, in my opinion, much more proprietary.
Was there a lot more like IPOs back in the day then?
There was IPOs. There was a lot, more products, and there was no do-it-yourselfers. Everybody used somebody. Commissions were much different. Mm-hmm. Many of these distribution systems that we have now, they weren't even available back then. It was Schwab mostly.
Well, sure. I mean, there was no Robinhood.
Even Schwab was kind of
Acorn
new. Schwab was new when I got in there. E-Trade, Scottrade, those things, they didn't even exist yet.
For sure. I mean, the internet wasn't.
Fidelity was the big mutual fund company. Vanguard was, certainly, around, but it wasn't nearly as big as it was, when I started. As Fidelity was really the 600-pound gorilla.
Okay.
Things are different.
Yeah, for sure. And when it comes to like 401ks or massive benefit plans, you weren't doing anything like that, were you?
No.
Okay. No, those are like still benefit brokers, that kind of stuff.
Most of the people had defined benefit plans, which means they put in all this money and they were, getting a defined pension when they retired, a guaranteed pension. And that's what you alluded to earlier. Companies were doing away with that because the government was concerned also because you had underfunded liabilities with these companies, meaning that, they should have had 100% of money in the bucket and they maybe only had 70 or 80. Well, who's going to be on the hook to make up that difference?
Right.
The government. So the idea is let's take it away from the companies and let's put it towards people to save. And the companies were happy. And, it was one less thing to worry about. I mean, we still have a lot of underfunded pension liabilities today. And that's, has a lot more to do with 2008 and unrealistic investments in the lost decade. Don't get me started. But, we still have pretty good deficits with, police and fire or, teachers, things like that. So,
well, I think this is a good start into a lot of conversations that I want to continue down this 401k thought process and how people can accurately save for the future. If you are
I would tell you, Kyle, it's really a personal choice. But if you're going to look at it from a financial standpoint, it could be really hard to make the financial argument that people used to make about deferral.
I would have to agree. And I think you have to, especially when it comes to long-term financial discipline, you have to remove the emotional component.
Yeah, the only good thing.
I mean, we know if you are emotional, you would have pulled all your stocks in March.
Right.
And then you'd be scrambling to re-enter the market now when it's back at a high.
Well, and the one thing that I have said, and I do need to be fair, is if you're going to be the person that has to have the 401k to be able to save
as a like unconscious,
or
you
to be forced to be saving, and that's what you need to do it, then absolutely. Because
we have other tools though that can help you.
Well, at the same time,
I don't want to get into that right now.
People aren't saving, as we know. So.
Right. Well, I want to keep it with the Joneses. Anyways, well, I think this is a great start to a line of conversations that I'm really interested in having, because finance is really still new to me. And I mean, I have a $360,000 mistake that I made not saving even in the military TSP program for 8 years. Had I just saved for those 8 years and done nothing else when I was 65.
I have one too, getting sick and not having the insurance I thought I had. Well, but that's a story for another day.
So I think for our other listeners out there, if you have questions about utilizing a 401k, we are always available. info@healthiermoney. Shoot us an email, or anywhere on the socials. You can hit us in the DMs, shoot us a message, leave us a comment. And if you subscribe to us here on Anchor, where we use our podcast, you're free to send us a voice message. You can go to the anchor.fm app, or to Healthier Money, anchor.fm/healthiermoney. And you can leave us a voice message asking a question about your personal financial situation. We don't have to air the actual question that you leave us if there's any personal stuff in there, but we can address your concerns or answer your questions. My name is Kyle Petyak. I will be here every time, accompanied by Pat Moran.
34 years and counting.
As always, live long and profit.
It's been a long weekend. Talk to you guys later.